Hey everybody, Noah here from PaperCut, Solution Architect, and I'm going to be spending some time with those of you who've chosen my session, which is probably going to be the best session, not trying to brag. I'm going to spend some time with you talking about Windows protected printing, print deploy, and ARM64. No doubt some of these things have been kind of buzzwords. I'm assuming if you're talking to customers right now and people are starting to feel the rumblings of these changes, that this is starting to kind of bring up some questions in your mind. And I'm assuming that that's why you're joining this session now, is you want to kind of dive into some of that. Now, I'm not going to say I'm a total expert as part of this session and preparing for it. I kind of had to do my own research and I had to go talk to some of our developers. I did a little bit of tinkering and testing myself because, to be honest, I hadn't really played with Windows protected printing and modern printing and really kind of delved into some of those different things. But as I kind of went through the whole thing, I really felt like there was a lot to share. And I felt like if I was back in my old role as a reseller or a solutions rep, I would be kind of just unsure, and feeling just a lot of trepidation about the changes that are coming down the pipe. So my hope is that today we demystify some of those things. We show that actually the changes that are coming are pretty simple. They're things you can prepare for. They're things your customers can prepare for. And I'm hoping you just feel just a zen, a relaxation about this as you can kind of consult with your customers about what the next steps might look like for their companies. All right, so it's going to be a mixture of slideshow. It's going to be a little bit of demo and a lot of seeing my face. So, hopefully you're in for the long haul. All right, so let's jump in. So we all know that a change is coming. We feel it, right? I mean, for those of you who have been working with print for, let's say, the last 15, 20 years, print has stayed kind of the same. There hasn't been a lot of changes. Which is kind of nice. I remember installing my first, printer and print driver, and I was super freaked out at a customer site. Someone was like, "Hey, can you install these printers for this customer?" And I'm thinking, I've never installed a printer before, and just kind of going through that process. And now, gosh, that was maybe 15 years ago. So I know many of you who have been in the industry, you know that there's something big coming. You've seen the adoption of ARM64. If you're working with education or customers who buy a lot of devices at a time, probably people are buying, Surfaces or Snapdragons, or if you're like me, an M series Mac, Apple Silicon. And so all of this change, the signals on the horizon, it can feel like a lot, but today we're going to dive into each little bit. When it comes to the changes, we talked about it's been 20 years since printing has changed. We're all very familiar with it. And, change isn't fun. We don't enjoy it. We want things to stay the same, but there's some very good reasons why change is coming. But I would just say that one of the biggest value adds of the changes that are coming is we're standing at the edge, right, of a major turning point where we're going to see more driverless printing. And hey, drivers are great, but they have their problems, as we all know. They enable stapling and, hole punch and fancy tray selection, but they come with their challenges as well. So driverless printing is going to become the new normal. And I think people are going to have to rethink print as a result. And that's not just us at PaperCut, that's also you if you're selling devices or software, and also the OEMs who are actually building the equipment and developing some of this supporting software. Now, if you're talking to customers, there's going to be some fear. I've already had large customers reaching out to me saying, what do I do? Should I renew my PaperCut contract, or should I buy new copiers? Or is that a bad idea? Because what if I do something with my technology and then it rules out the possibility later on of actually using these new technologies, or puts me, maybe in a dead end? And I would say too, I think that, we need to view this as a learning process. Even though I work at PaperCut and we're part of the MOPRI Alliance, we're part of the print working group, so we're kind of, as a developer, we're on the inside. We've got as much information as anybody. We're still navigating these things together. We're still kind of watching the market. We're still kind of talking to Microsoft and going, okay, how is this going to play out? Because there's a lot of players involved when you factor all the people making copiers and all of the software companies and operating systems, all trying to work together to evolve print for a more secure purpose. The other thing, and we talked about ARM a little bit, and I'm a happy recipient of ARM devices here. We're just seeing a huge, large-scale adoption of ARM devices. But what a lot of people don't realize, and I actually just talked to a customer a couple days ago who said the exact same thing, is people buy these devices And then they think, oh, you know what? Let me enable printing now. No big deal. It's just a Windows device, ARM64. But then maybe they don't find a driver that they're used to finding for their device. They go, wait, where's the driver? I thought you had a driver for ARM64. And they just didn't think about it, because print sometimes is the last thing they think about, right? And so with this modern shift, we're seeing a lot of customers who are buying ARM, they can't go backwards. They can't go back to normal drivers, normal print queues. They actually have to evolve their whole entire infrastructure. Meanwhile, users are like, hey, I need to print, so can you hurry up? That's kind of a stressful position. But ARM has forced us into this position where manufacturers may not make an ARM driver for a printer. They might just push somebody towards a PSA. And we'll cover a little bit later what a PSA is. But that's going to kind of funnel customers towards very few options. And you want to be prepared. You kind of want to know what options are available. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. All right, so why did all this change have to happen? I mean, if none of us like change, and if things have been working pretty good for 20 years, why are we changing it? I mean, it seems like an obvious question. I actually think Microsoft is doing a good thing here, right, in trying to force the market, or at least maybe not force, but move the market towards more secure defaults. There's some big security issues with printing. So just kind of looking at some of the numbers that Microsoft themselves have kind of shared, it feels like, things are fine, but when you look at the numbers, 9% of all Windows bugs come down to actual print-related vulnerabilities. And that's reported through Microsoft's Security Response Center. The spooler, if you're familiar with kind of how this all works, the spooler uses system privileges, and that in some cases is even more powerful than an administrator. Where an administrator sometimes is tuned to least privilege, only things they need. The system has a lot more power, and unfortunately, that kind of makes it a very, an easy attack vector, right? A gold mine, if you will, for attackers. Now, Microsoft looked back at a lot of the vulnerabilities that have come up over the last, historically in the last few years. And they've estimated that 50% of those vulnerabilities would have been just solved or prevented altogether if people were using Windows protected printing. And we'll talk a little bit more about Windows protected printing. I know it kind of feels like scary, unknown, but I think that the thing to kind of think back is, wow, 50%, that's pretty solid. And so, I can see why this change is needed, and hopefully you see that as well. So rather than, with customers, we're trying to hold on to the past, let's embrace the future, let's learn together, let's educate ourselves, educate our customers on the security benefits, and we'll walk this path just as a collective in the print industry. And I'd say the last challenge of the way that things currently are, and it's kind of one of the bonuses of moving to the more modern print stack, is drivers. Third-party drivers are really challenging. If there's a vulnerability in a third-party driver, it can be really hard for Microsoft or, to get that resolved, and it's kind of out of their control, right? And that doesn't feel great for their Windows users. So, whether it's, some OEMs are really quick in resolving an issue with the driver, maybe the driver's for an older or legacy printer, and so it's maybe never going to get resolved. So it's just challenging without some kind of unified standard, without everybody kind of working within a constrained kind of series of decisions. There's just too many chances for things to go wrong, and it's too slow to get things fixed. So I think we all kind of agree, hopefully, hopefully I've convinced you, that print does need to change, even though I love good old-fashioned printing. Let's talk a little bit about some of the new terms you may encounter with modern print stack. There's a few definitions. You've probably heard these terms bounce around, and I'll admit I had to kind of talk to a few people internally and be like, okay, you've been testing this, explain these terms to me. So the first we'll just talk about is IPP, and I'd say the many faces of IPP. We've heard of Internet Printing Protocol before. I'm sure you've seen it if you've ever configured a printer, maybe on Mac, or maybe you've seen it with Mobility Print. But what is IPP, just regular IPP? Well, it's a standard for push printing, and it's kind of based off of HTTP, right? And so, we're all pretty comfortable with that. We've seen IPP before. But what about IPP infra? Well, it kind of sounds like, what was that, like IPP infrastructure? I don't know, And so in talking to the devs, the best way they could kind of put it is this is more of a pull printing, where standard IPP is a push. IPP infra is kind of like underpinning a lot of the modern technology that you're seeing come out from companies like, Microsoft or PaperCut. We're trying to leverage IPP infra to create a more secure way of delivering jobs, and it's more of a pull. So whether it's from the cloud or from a local device, a pull of the job is just inherently more secure than a push, right, of that job between two endpoints. And the other thing that's kind of cool about IPP Infra is zero trust compatibility, which is going to become more important in the future. I'm already seeing it almost every week, as a solution architect. Customers are moving to environments with Zscalers, or they're doing host isolation, or they're really segregating their network. And so we need other technologies to come into play, and print has to evolve. I mean, this is just kind of one of those things. So IPP Infra, it's more that pull printing. It's with that future in mind, that zero trust future, that more enterprise-ready, secure printing. And then IPP Everywhere is a standard, and it kind of mandates certain things for printer manufacturers, software companies, et cetera. This is just kind of like, let's all agree to use things the same way. But really what's big about it is it's driverless, right? Driverless support is what defines IPP Everywhere. All right, so that's kind of your many faces of IPP. Let's talk about Microsoft terms. You've got Windows protected printing. No doubt you're familiar with Windows protected printing. You've heard it a bunch of times. It's a little toggle. It's really innocent. You turn it on, it removes all, I would say, attack vectors. It removes any print queues with traditional drivers, and it only allows IPP class drivers. It only allows WSD port, more kind of IPP-based printer objects. No more local ports, no more TCP/IP. Gone. See you later. PSAs, you might have heard this term before, a printer support app. This is kind of like what drivers are today, but in a sandbox. It gives the ability for manufacturers and OEMs to actually put functionality in kind of a secure sandbox, like what you'd see in a driver. So if I'm a user and I want more than just my standard printing options, I can use a PSA from the manufacturer. It's pretty slick in some cases how it gets added to your machine, but it basically is just kind of taking the place that the vacuum that the driver's leaving behind when we remove drivers. And some of these PSAs, because legacy printers, they kind of get left out when you turn on Windows protected printing. Some PSAs can act as a bit of a medium through which to print to legacy printers still, because a lot of what's happening with Windows protected printing is PDF or PWG raster or certain formats. It's not the formats that legacy printers are used to seeing. And so there's certain prerequisites, and not all printers can participate. So a PSA can kind of help bridge the gap. And then last, I'll just talk about these working groups. PWG, Printer Working Group, is just focusing a lot on standardizing IPP for enterprise and cloud environments. And so just, this is all the best minds in the industry trying to make print better. And then you have the MOPRI Alliance, which is more of a tactical group. It's a little more commercial in nature. Microsoft's in there, Google, we're in there, OEMs are in there, and we're trying to kind of make the IPP technology just basically the discovery of printing and the whole experience from the end user side. It's beyond the standard, and it's more the holistic end-to-end experience of IPP and this modern IPP Everywhere stack, kind of applied in our day-to-day lives. There is a certification as well with MOPRIA, so it's a little more specific about printers need to meet certain criteria. There's actually a list. You can see what printers are kind of already compatible with MOPRIA Alliance. So that's something that, you can look up. I'm no doubt as a reseller, you're probably already familiar with which printers are actually supported in your environment, but that's kind of how that works. All right, hopefully you're hanging in there. We're gonna get to some demo here in a little bit, but let's talk a little bit about Microsoft's modern print platform. In other words, Windows protected print. This is the big fish. Microsoft constitutes a lot of the market, and so this is where customers are gonna naturally gravitate when they think about evolving print. Apple's also evolving print, right? So, everybody's participating, but Microsoft's the big fish. So let's talk about Windows protected printing. I mean, what is it? It's essentially a new preferred way for a Windows device to talk to printers. It's a more streamlined stack, and as you see, if you test it out, it's pretty quick, pretty slick, very automated. It moves away from legacy methods towards IPP, more modern methods. It says goodbye to drivers, but hello to PSAs, which we've talked a little bit about and we'll cover more later. And then ultimately, it's built for compatibility, right? So it's built for MOPRIA certified devices. And it's really kind of trying to get everybody to play along and to use the same terms and the same standards. I think once we get to the end of that road, it's going to feel great. Right now, while everybody's still catching up, it's kind of hit or miss, right? Some experiences with some copiers are great and some are not. Sometimes you can afford to replace a fleet, right, as a customer, and sometimes you kind of have to live with some legacy devices. So it's going to be up to you as a solutions person or a technical person to kind of know how to guide your customers through those things. And then, Microsoft's Windows Protected Print is also going to give you control and flexibility. Now, users can turn this on, which is dangerous. They can toggle it on and it'll just blow away their print queues. Or you can actually manage it via group policy. So that's probably what a lot of organizations will do if they choose to enforce it. But yeah, that's kind of Windows Protected Print in a nutshell, and we'll do a demo of it a little later on. All right, so let's go over a few questions that you might have. There are definitely a few questions that I thought you might have and that I kind of had when I was talking to our team about these changes. And, because our team's been doing testing and discovery, so kind of wanted to pick their brain. The first question is, will customers need a PSA in order to print? And the good news is no. So out of the box, when you turn on Windows Protected Printing, you still get to keep printers that have an IPP class driver. And the great news is because of that standardized approach to IPP, you get a lot of the basics kind of right then and there. And what I've heard from our dev team is that the IPP standard, it offers a lot of finishing options. So we're definitely going to try to leverage that as PaperCut. And we're probably going to see manufacturers and different, kind of offerings expand just within the basic experience without a PSA. Now, PSAs are important in some cases because they're going to have a really unique finishing that is not universal on copiers. You sold that massive finisher and it makes you a latte or something. PaperCut doesn't want to rule that out, right? We know that the future is going to involve PSAs one way or another. And so we are going to make sure that we will work with PSAs. Right now, if you were to install PaperCut with our WPP compliant mode, you would not have support for PSAs. We couldn't kind of tie into them, but it's already something we're testing and working towards and we feel really good about. So rest assured on that one. Okay, what happens to non-compliant print queues when you turn on WPP? Remember we said it's kind of an innocent toggle. You just go, oh yeah, this seems pretty great. Let me just turn this on. It blows away your printers. Well, it is kind of cut and dry. When you turn on WPP, any queues, especially legacy ones that don't support, PDF jobs or PWG raster or any of the new formats, they're going to suffer. And your queues that are configured with Type 3 drivers, they're going to get blown away. And so just kind of bear in mind, set some expectations with your customers that is what happens to non-compliant print queues when you turn it on. Now remember, you don't actually have to turn on Windows Protected Printing to actually use the more modern print stack. Not a lot of people know this. That's just enforcing and tightening the parameters. But you can actually, if you have a situation where a customer has kind of a hybrid, they have maybe some newer printers that do support the modern standards and they're more WPP ready. And then maybe you have some legacy printers. For the ones that support it, Windows will already let you set those up in that modern way with the IPP class driver and the PSAs. That all still works even if the toggle is off. And then for your legacy printers, you can keep printing the normal way until they either phase out or, things like that. Or you can use, as just a sneak preview for later, you can use PaperCut because we do support both modern and legacy printers through mobility and print deploy. So with WPP on, so if customers won't feel safer with it on, then that's something you can consider. All right, so which printers are compatible, right? So we talked about the ones, there's a list of printers that are compatible with the modern standard that support IPP and PDF or PWG raster. So turns out we did a little bit of testing with thousands of printers just to see, and about 30% of printers may not be compatible with WPP. And so that's a pretty big chunk. And the reason for that is they either don't support PDF support, or they don't support IPP, or they have other limitations with file types they can receive, or maybe they just have really low memory. I mean, there's all kinds of situations, but fundamentally, we're thinking about 30% of the market is just not going to work. And so that kind of leads me to my last question. What do I do? Can I support a legacy and a WPP instance all at once? Now, the tricky thing is when you turn on WPP, it's all or nothing. But with PaperCut, with print deploy and mobility, we can actually convert any print queue to a WPP compatible one as long as it's published through mobility and print deploy. And that works with legacy printers or modern printers. So I would say if you're in a situation where you have this hybrid workflow, try proposing PaperCut, especially mobility and print deploy. It'll give your customers some time, buy them some time as they're evaluating their timelines and figuring out when they want to refresh their fleets and kind of what their own roadmap for technology looks like. Okay, So now we've talked a little bit about WPP, we've talked about why it's happening, let's talk about our solution. So for those who haven't tested it yet, our solution to this problem is mobility and print deploy, as we've kind of been talking about. It combines the cross-platform strengths of mobility. If you've used mobility, you can take a print server and make those printers available to, Windows, Mac, Chrome, Android, iOS, which is incredible. If you've been in the print industry, that's not easy to do. But then it combines that with print deploy, which is this management interface. If you've never sold print deploy before, allows you to deploy queues and drivers for non-WPP printers. Local queues, server queues, gives you one place, one pane of glass to actually manage your environment. And if you're an IT admin deploying queues, print queues to your users, that's a lot of work. So print deploy with mobility, it's the perfect combination, and it's WPP ready. We've made sure it's already compatible so you don't have to sweat it. So the way that it actually works is the print deploy client, when it's deploying mobility objects, it'll detect that WPP is enabled on that machine. So it's on a per machine basis, and it'll actually reinstall those print queues, those mobility queues, in a compatible way. And so that means that those queues are going to have the IPP class driver. You don't have to do any manual config. You don't have to think ahead like, oh, which users are going to use WPP. It'll detect it on a client by client basis, which kind of saves you some time, right? And just in terms of configuring things. And if you're an administrator, don't need to worry about it, right? The other thing is it is compatible, like we talked about, with legacy or modern printers. And so you're going to have kind of that nice foundation from which to kind of move to the future. And then I do want to kind of offer a slight reality check. If you enable this, if you enable our functionality for Windows protected printing, and just in general with Windows protected printing, there's a lot of cases where you're not going to have advanced finishing. So our solution today is for more basic printing, just kind of the foundational features, which is why I think you should probably talk to your customers when they're wanting to move to WPP about, is this the right time? Because Microsoft has their roadmap. We don't know if that roadmap will get extended or if it'll get moved up. But right now, we don't have to make a change today. We should be planning for the future. By the time that we need to make some of those shifts, we're already working towards adding stapling, hole punching, tray selection into our PaperCut experience. So I would say if you have customers who don't need to move today, kind of like tell them, hey, let's just hold off a little bit. PaperCut will get there, and kind of just offers you that really seamless experience. Okay, demo time. That was a lot of talking. Let's first just kind of show print deploy. So as you can see, I'm here in my print deploy interface. I've got my beautiful zone here. Now I do want to take a moment just to pause and show you that we do now support ARM64. It's in beta. This is huge, right? So if you can't find a driver for an ARM64 device, we have our PaperCut global PostScript driver. So no worries there. But yeah, as you can see all the different driver architectures, etc. I've got these printers deployed. They're legacy printers. I called them legacy printers because I want to showcase that this works with legacy printers. And I've got them mapped to a zone. Now, what else I have is a Windows 11 device running in Parallels, which is also ARM-based, right? So this is an ARM64 device. Now, the first thing I want to show you, if I can kind of draw your attention to our printers and scanners, is I've got a bunch of printers in here. I've got, this HP that I added. And by the way, as you'll notice, Windows protected print mode is on. So that means it already blew away all my other printers. And so I've kind of gone in and said, okay, I'm going to add a couple outside PaperCut. That's this HP here and this Xerox. But I'm also going to let Mobility Print and Print Deploy, because I've got the Print Deploy client running here, I'm going to let them add those legacy printers, which before were not compliant. But then after I turned on Windows protected printing and it deleted my legacy printers that came from PaperCut, I just want to call this out real quick. At first it wasn't working and I was going, why isn't it working? I ended up restarting my machine and it started working. So because some of the checks that happen in PaperCut happen at startup, or when the print deploy client is starting up, if you don't see it working right away, don't freak out. Okay, I did. I got a little freaked out. Thought maybe I had the wrong build or something, but it was actually just I needed to restart my machine. So turned on Windows Protect Printing, restarted the machine, and my two legacy printers came back. So those are my two printers. If we look at these printers, we could look at their properties. You'll notice the port. Yeah, in Windows Protected Printing, it's a WSD port. I know a lot of us were removing those. Every time I saw a WSD port, let's just say 10 years ago, it was causing issues. Microsoft was laying the groundwork for essentially the future of print. Now this is what happens. The ports, like if you look for a new printer, it replaces it with a WSD port, and ultimately it's going to leverage IPP. So yeah, that's what it's going to look like. That is normal. This is a PaperCut printer, even though it is compatible with WPP, which is kind of cool. You also see if you go to the driver, it's a Microsoft IPP class driver. So that's what we've been talking about. Every printer that you look at is going to be an IPP class driver. Same thing, so I'll show you a couple that I added outside of PaperCut. So here's an HP. We can look at the printer properties there. We can look at the advanced IPP class driver. And so the magic is really all of these printers are offering this really basic, great foundational feature set. And then if you want to, I'll show you what a PSA looks like. The Xerox, in this case, it had a PSA. Now, when I installed the Xerox, it said it worked. It took a while for it to show up. And I think it's just because it was retrieving the PSA. It's all automatic. So there's a printer ID, and then it reaches out to the Microsoft Store, and it gets the app if it's available, and it actually just sets it up for you. So let me show you what it looks like to open that PSA. So it's called the printer app in this case. And the Xerox one comes with a lot of stuff. It's got printing, scanning, document toolkit. So OEMs are taking this opportunity to provide extra stuff. For some people, that might be a bad thing. You may be like, I don't want any, no offense, bloatware. For some, it's going to be amazing. They're going to like, oh, I'm so happy I have this stuff. For us, though, right now, PaperCut is not compatible with PSAs. Our functionality is more geared towards making basic printing working. And then when we do offer finishing, we're going to probably prioritize doing that through IPP finishing and through the basic kind of options you have when you file print. But yeah, that's just kind of your baseline. I just want you to kind of be familiar with it. So let me minimize this real quick, and I will show you. This is a technical session. I know it hasn't been the most technical, but hopefully it's still kind of scratching the itch. You'll see here that I'm looking at the log for the print deploy client, and there's this entry that you want to look for. This shows you that the print deploy client has properly detected WPP is enabled. You'll see running mobility proxy in IPP infra mode. Look for that line. That tells you all good. It detected WPP. It replaced your printers. You didn't have to do anything. It knows how to make those printers WPP compatible. If you don't see that, like I said, restart your computer. For me, that did the trick. There might be something else going on, so you can always reach out if you hit an issue. Okay, so this is the full circle moment. This is the part where, I know you techies, you want to see me print a job. We work in the print industry, and even though PaperCut, we want to remove printing, stop people from printing unnecessarily. This is essential because I need to show you that this is all working. So let's go to one of our queues. Go back to our printers and scanners here. We'll select one of our mobility print queues because I want you to know this is a mobility queue. I know you showed you as WSD port, IPP class driver. Nothing looked like mobility print here, but it was re-added using print deploy and mobility. So let's just send a test page, and hopefully, the demo will be successful. We'll flip over, ignore those two job logs on my server. There it is. There's the job. It came through. Oh my gosh, it worked. So anyway, that's WPP. The call to action for those of you who have been watching is to play around with it, get familiar with it. We're definitely going to see it more and more. We've barely seen any customers enable Windows protected printing. Even though there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of talk about it. Practically speaking, it's a little early for a lot of customers. It may not be the right choice yet. But if you got somebody who wants to turn this on, get them onto PaperCut Print Deploy, get some mobility queues created. It'll just make sure that everything works. And then the other thing I would say, I think it's about 50% of our customers are not using Print Deploy. And so my suggestion would be, if you've got customers out there, they're thinking about the future of print, you should start, or I'm going to ask you, I think you should start proposing to them that they look at Print Deploy. Print deploy obviously can solve other issues as well, driver deployment, moving away from certain types of servers and things like that if you want to go more client-based for printing. But the reason I'm saying that is because with MF, we're going to be putting a lot of investment in Print Deploy. We're going to hopefully make that kind of like the solution for WPP within MF that enables all the finishing and the streaming of the jobs and the modern find me, and a lot of features will flow through print deploy. So if you have customers who are not using print deploy today and they're worried about the future of print, they should start looking at print deploy because that is the foundation for a lot of the future work we're going to do at PaperCut. The other thing that I'll say is if you're looking more towards PaperCut Pocket and Hive, we're doing a client refactor right now. You're probably aware of that. But once we're done with the refactor, that is when we're going to add, we're right there with Hive, and we've already got most of the functionality that we need for WPP. We just need to flip a couple of switches. And so we will do that once the client refactor is done, and Hive will be compatible as well. So just hold on if you got Hive customers. I know it feels modern. It is modern. There's a couple things we got to do to kind of make WPP work, but just hold off for now. And then if you're if you have MF customers, get them on print deploy. That's the best way to prepare them. All right, well, hopefully you found this at least a little bit entertaining and informative. I hope this has helped kind of demystify WPP and modern print stack a little bit. If you have questions, we're always happy to field those. Go ahead and send those to us, the solutions team, and we're happy to answer. All right, have a good day.